Good evening. Coming to you live from the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network on LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. You're listening to the Chappy. You're listening to Chap's Fantasy Chat, and tonight we have a great show. So I'm really hyped to bring this to you. Tonight we're going to talk about the deepest position in fantasy baseball. And I'm really excited about it. Why am I excited about it? Well, really, if you think about strategy and how you want to approach drafting, I usually break it down into offensive and pitching. And where you want to start when you look at your offensive philosophy is right here with these players. That's why it's so important. This is probably the most important thing that I do, is going through these guys, especially at the top. And this is why I broke this episode down into two parts. Tonight, we're going to talk about the first 24. So I always do 12-player team or 12-player drafts. I like to do tiers, right? So 12 outfielders is your outfield 1. 13 through 24 is your outfield 2. So tonight we're going to talk about our top 2 outfielders. These are the stars of the stars, okay? These are going to cost high draft capital in most cases, but I'll tell you there's some values in here when we're talking about this. Outfield is, first off, can you hear me, guys? Outfield it can make or break your fantasy year. If you choose the wrong guys, you're gonna feel it all year. If you take a guy and he flops with your first, second, or third round draft pick, you're not gonna be able to recover from that quickly, if at all. That's why it's important. It's important to think critically and think independently, right? That's the important thing about who you value over whom and why. Tonight, I'm going to give you my version. I say this all the time. Thank you, Kevin. Welcome. I want to pause. Chef's Fantasy Chat is brought to you on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. Today, I want to congratulate Andrea Lamont in putting out, among many others, I know, Kevin, you were a big contributor as well, her draft guide. I after this show, plan on going and getting it. I'm assuming the link will be put in the chat room. If you're hearing me and you're not in the chat room, if you go to LennyMelnickFantasySports.com, you can sign in as a guest or you can register where you can submit questions and interact with the crowd. So, congratulations to Andrea. I want to take a second to give a heartfelt thank you to Andrea, Lenny, and all my friends, but most importantly, Lenny and Andrea, for all that you guys do. I want you guys to know we appreciate you, okay? So I'll quit sucking up. Let's get to these outfielders, right? Because this is awesome. This is the best part of doing this. So we're going to break it down. I'm going to go through the first 12. We're going to talk case by case in these guys, why I ranked them where I did, and what made them so appealing, okay? So first off, I tend to think of things, I tend to think of things from a dynasty point of view because I play in a lot of dynasty formats. So in general, you're going to get that perspective from me. But I do want to preface that by saying this right here doesn't matter. Redraft or dynasty. Hey, Andy, welcome. Congrats. I think Ronald Acuna is your first overall pick. And I know that there's a lot of these. And I love Trout. He's definitely a generational type player. He's been the consensus number 1 for quite a long time now. I just think Acuna is ready to take this torch over. So I have him as number one on my list. I just, if you think about Ronald Acuna and his age and his abilities, I don't have this exact stat in front of me. So I'm going to pause here. I usually just throw a whole bunch of data down your throat. Tonight I want to pause and talk about this, right? So I think I read a stat last year, but Acuna was the youngest player ever to hit 40-30, and I think he did it. He was 22. Again, I don't have it in front of me, but I just say it to mention that that's the type of talent we're dealing with when we're talking about Ronald Acuna. And I'll tell you, Malpal, I don't think that's overspending. How many other players are going to give you potentially 50-40 while holding an average? I mean, he has that potential, right? He's but 22 years old. So, yes, that's a lot of money. And so Malpal's talking, welcome Malpal, by the way. Malpal's talking about we're doing a slow auction on couch managers. But you have to take into account the automatic advantage that he gives you in homers, in stolen bases, in runs, especially if he leads off again, and in RBIs. I mean, he's one of a few true five-tool players. So I have Ronald Acuna at number one. His we'll go through ADPs as we go. His ADP is number one. It's kind of, it's he and Trout, in my opinion. Obviously, number two here is Trout. And again, I'm not doing it this way as a slight against Trout. It's more of a vote of confidence in how good Ronald Acuna is. It can be. Trout last year hit .291, 45 homers, 110 runs, 104 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. His WAR is the best for his point in his career. His WAR is the best of top three of all time. So there really is no understating how good Mike Trout has been. The thing about Trout that I'll let the crowd answer that. That's a good question, though. So the question is, would Malpal post it? Would you rather have Acuna or would you rather have Freeman and Baez? I'll let everyone answer that. Remind me, I'll contribute in a minute. My point on Trout, the one thing that bumped him down for me just a touch, and again, you're talking about generational type stats out of Mike Trout, and he's been that way for about a decade now. The stolen bases, I think you started to see them go down last year, albeit he still did have double figures. He still did have 11 stolen bases. But when you put it up against Acuna and his potential, not saying he's going to do it, I'm just saying he's trending in that direction. I think it's clear you have to put Acuna over Trout. But I did leave him at 2 because if you really look this outfield group is you could really take any of these top 5 players and put them at number 1 and have a legitimate argument, right? So that's really what we're talking about. That's why this is fun. That's why this might not look the same as what you have it. And, one of us will be right. At the end of the year, one of us will be right. But that's not really what's important. What's important is the thinking and getting to that point, okay? That's why we do this. That's why this is the fun part of doing this. It's basically comparing notes, okay? So I do want to take a second. I want to welcome. We got in the chat room right now. Andrea and Lenny, it's an honor to have you guys with me. I appreciate all your support. Like I said earlier, it's great to have you in the chat room. It is always an enjoyable show when you're here. Mount Powell, welcome. I really appreciate having you and Kevin Hastings as well, my roadie. Sent me a little piece tonight on Bo Bichette. Thought that was pretty cool. And sorry, Spafano. Is that how you say that? Welcome. Thanks for joining. Again, if you guys are just listening, you want to go to Lenny Melnick FantasySports.com and go to the website and you can interact, ask your questions. It really is a great group. Yeah, I love, I have Mookie at 40, Mount Powell, and I have him at number 3 on this list, so perfect timing. Everybody talks about Mookie Betts having a down year last year. Guys, I just don't see it. I mean, yeah, his average dropped. But he didn't steal as many bases. But that doesn't mean it's a down year. He's but 27 years old this year. Did you really think he was going to hit 346 again? Maybe you wanted over 300. That's fine. I get it. But 295 is pretty darn good. 29 homers? That's a down year? He had 135 runs last year, guys. That's an elite number, okay? Those are the sorts... I think Lenny was saying it yesterday morning. He was talking about runs being hard to come by, or runs being... I can't remember how he worded it. It doesn't matter. Runs being tough to accumulate. Mookie Betts at 135 runs. Now, I know you can't count on that. But he had 129 the year before that. Boston's still going to score a lot of runs. He's going to be right in the heart of that order. Again, we're talking about a guy who stole 30 bases 2 years ago. Yes, he only stole 16 last year. Sign me up for 29 and 16 with a 295 average every year. Every year. So I have bets over. I know who I have bets over. I have him over Yelich. I have him over Bellinger. But that's why. When you're building on the front end of your draft, getting guys like this sets you up for success. Because you're always chasing average, you're always chasing runs, and you're always chasing stolen bases. Right off the bat, you're knocking those 3 out. If you back it up properly. Okay? I love Mookie Betts. I thought, again, Mount Powell, it was the case with me in that draft. It was, this draft's really weird. There's like 20 players up at a time. I had like all my money out, and I'm like, oh crap, I can't. I was max betted, so I'm like, I can't keep bidding on this guy. 41's about right, considering, like you said, Acuna went for 50, and I think Trout went for like 46 or 47. That's maybe a $1 or $2 deal. So, Mookie Betts' ADP currently is 4.7. Again, having him as number 3. Number 3 outfielder is the number 3 overall. So, I value him. I think he's going to have a really good year this year. Again, just 27 years old. Number 4, this was a tough one for me, right? Because at this point, you're slighting someone. I went with Christian Yelich here. His ADP's 3, and I went with him because of the stolen base potential.